Do you think that there's part of like our ape culture that this is just how it's manifesting now?
Yeah, to some extent. If you ever watch apes, they kill for pleasure, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the other animals don't do that. So they had developed enough to kill for pleasure. Wow, what an accomplishment. It takes me back to my David Brooks point. Intelligence is overrated, he says. One time I was at the Philadelphia Zoo. They have an island there with chimpanzees on it. And I grew up with Tarzan and cheetah, and I thought all chimpanzees were like, 30 inches tall. And they never grew up.
Right.
I saw them attack a pigeon that was trying to take their food, and they enjoyed it. They killed that thing. And in that, I saw gang behavior. Yeah, there's too much ape in us, far too much ape in us. We're oversexed.
Do you think that some of that is where our ego comes from?
Yeah, I do. The macho machismo stuff.
Yeah.
That's male. It stinks of testosterone. It's something that we, men, have to overcome. Every one of us. The more, like Kennedy, the more they are leaders, the more strength of will they have, the more they attract women, the more charisma they have, the more they are tempted to abuse that privilege that women love them. Women go after them. Women make fools of themselves over them. That's a challenge they have to overcome. That's a challenge every man in power has to overcome. In fact, there's one thing you can be sure about people. They can't handle power.
No. We keep finding that out.
In any form whatsoever, they can't handle it. You cannot give a gun to a guy and say, go ahead, go out there and have a good time. I've been very, very critical of the police in the past because I think they need to have much more psychological screening than they do.
Yes.
They need to go in their pen. They need to know what happened to them when they were 16 years old.
Well, that's an interesting point and sort of an aside. My grandfather was a chief of police. I grew up with a lot of respect for authority, but at the same time, a very strong bone to question authority. And I used to always say my thing was we only need police because some of us have to be policed. What do you think is what do you think is the trick to us getting to a point where we can be more harmonious? We don't have to worry about the least common denominator all the time.
But I have an answer for you, friends. When we as a culture displace our ancestors as people who watch over us, when we displace them with a cartoon character or whatever you want to call it, with an idol, don't worship idols. We don't advance. We just don't advance. The reason you should respect elders, and they don't, because the new is everything. The new is all. They cannot sell you anything unless they trash the old. So they trash the old.
Well, new is actually the most commonly used word in all advertisements, completely irrespective of anything. Product, region, target market, new is the biggest used word.
And so why do you respect the elders? Because they actually know better. Not because it's the right thing to do. Now, you should do it because it's the right thing to do, but you could do it for a selfish reason, that they know better. And when you don't listen to your elders, let's say you're not afraid to kill somebody. You do not see any repercussions from the law. They're never going to know. They'll let you go, blah, blah, blah. Or from your soul. It's that part that's missing. Why are they not afraid that somebody on the other, when they go to the other side, they're not afraid because they think the moment they die, it's all over.
Right.
So they think they could do whatever they want. They also have a golden ticket. And I've been talking about this for years. If you believe in me, all your sins are forgiven. That's a golden ticket. Where did you get the idea that this entity that you imagine can absolve you of murdering people? But somehow you have that idea. You have that idea that you can kill, you can steal, you can rape, and nothing will ever happen to you. You'll never have to face that cop. You'll never feel bad about it. If you don't have that within yourself, the only other thing you can count on is fear.
Right.
So when they say fear of God, that's what they're talking about. It's not respect for the woman. It's fear of God, or fear of reprisal, fear of punishment. Well, if that's what it takes, unfortunately, it's better than nothing, because you're still getting people murdered. You still have people who have no conscience, and they never will have a conscience. But what if they, instead of believing that Jesus will forgive them if they go to church and say whatever, what if they thought that their grandfather would not want them to do this, that their grandmother is looking down and no, they can hear the voice of their older brother who was killed by gangs 2 years ago. They can hear the voice of their friend who died young. That's been supplanted. That's been eliminated. That conscience, that element of conscience, the awareness of other souls, somebody other than you, is groundbreaking in people. It's revelational. It's like, I'm not the only person on the planet.
Well, it seems like we're living in a world right now that really is reinforcing we're the center of the universe thing.
Yes.
And
narcissism is at an all-time high.
And this is one of the things where I always say I'm grateful that I lived before the internet, because I think that was one of the big tidal shifts there.
Absolutely correct. We can't handle what we have. They shove it on us because they make money out of it. But it doesn't mean we can handle it. I mean, they're going to do whatever they can to us. If they could find some way to putting something and implant something in us that does this, that, or the other thing, they're already doing that. We're going to go for it because it's new. It's new. It's new. I wrote one time that right now, the way they treat old people is horrible.
Horrible.
They don't do it in Japan.
No. Lots of other countries they don't.
Right, because, they know better. But we don't have any respect. We think that they're old or worthless because how did we get that idea? By looking at the phone, by looking at the TV, whatever we use to connect with that other world, with the world of advertising, they're all giving us the same message, what you said. New, which means, by implication, that old is shitty, old is garbage.
You're right.
You don't want old is bad. The connotation, we have to change. We can no longer throw stuff out. We can no longer. So if we have a blender that really works and it's just old and worn, but it really works, keep the damn thing. Don't buy another blender. If you have an iron that works, keep it. If you have a shirt that didn't wear through like the Chinese fabrics do within a few months, keep it. If you have a set of chisels that have been around for 20 years and they look like they could do the job for another 20 years, keep it. Don't buy it new.
Well, we've got a disease of consumerism now, big time. I think George Carlin said it, we're the third mall from the sun. And, that's something that...
Have you watched, the ads are different. I watch them as if I had just came to the earth after 20 years. I watch the ads.
Mm-hmm.
Drug ads become so prevalent. And you know what? I wrote articles for Natural Awakenings in Orlando for several years. I was a contributing editor. And I wrote that, first of all, that we're not living longer. We are actually dying longer. That's exactly what's happening. And this is, it's not a good trend.
Well, that's some of the ego thing of it all, too. Like, we prolong our lives for what? We've abandoned so many of the things that we used to want more time for. We've almost just created more time for the rat race.
If you think about it, this is really what I was trying to get at. We have become our own crop. We farm our diseases. So many of us have portfolios with drug companies in them. Once I got a, they send you this 10-page crap because you're a stockbroker owner. They send you this advertisement about how great they are.
Right.
And it was they were making drugs for asthma, and they were showing how asthma is increasing and how happy they were. And I realized that we were betting against ourselves with these stocks.
All over the place.
We are betting against ourselves. We are the crop. And we become so stupid that we really believe that, like the insurance company, we really believe they're running a charity.
Don't get me started on insurance.
Have we really done that? We really believe they're running a charity?
Yeah.
Seriously?
Yeah. Here's another one of those things. I guess this is an operative question for you. How do we have so many of these obvious things that aren't obvious? Because insurance is one of those ones that kills me. If you don't understand that the people behind that understood the math was only going to work out in their favor before they pushed the go button and it was going to be nuts to you, how do we live in this world where insurance is this thing and we have so many of these things that are set up that are ultimately just going to be nuts to us, but we just march right into it like, here we go.
Wait a minute. Wait. You're close there. The odds favor the house, right?
Always.
Odds always favor the house.
Yeah.
You walk right into it, right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So when you walk into church on Sunday and they pass the plate around, do you put money in there?
Well, me personally, no.
Everybody's got their hand out, man.
Yeah.
Even the church. Everybody's got their hand out. And we have become all about stuff.
Yeah.
We've forgotten what's important. We don't live to make the world a better place. We live to gather stuff. As Carlin would call it, just my shit, you know?
Yeah, and this is one of the things that was wrapping me up that I wanted to talk to you about. You know, there's another lyric that says the car is our wheelchair. And since with my visual impairment I don't drive, I walk around a lot, and I notice it strikes me how goofy we all look in our cars riding around. And we don't think to ourselves, God, we each have one of these? We're each burning gas for one of these? What are we doing? So I guess it's all part of where does critical thinking fall out of fashion? And how do we start to act like this is a valuable thing again, more valuable than stuff?
Well, there's one formula that's very, very true, that the easier we have it, the dumber we get.
Yeah, that's idiocracy.
Idiocracy, oh my God, don't get me started. The part where the president's driving down and shooting the AK-47 in the air.
Yeah.
You know, models in bikinis around, and it's a parade.
The big gold chain.
Funny as hell.
I worry about that sometimes, though.
I don't know how to break it to you, but we're getting dumber. It's really bad. It's you know, I don't know how to tell these people. The more it's answered for you, the less you can think yourself.
What do you think can happen, though, that will make it operative again for us to see the value and have the desire to critically think again?
The first time we realize that we are not alone in this universe will be a game changer. They're going to have to tell us. We're right on the verge right now.
It feels like that, doesn't it?
They are not hiding anymore. All right? I can tell you that much. They're not hiding. They had that huge ship. It was years ago over Phoenix that you couldn't. Problem is, we started to benefit from them. We made a deal with them back in the 50s. We made a deal with the Greys that they could come and take people for experiments as long as they put them back. They don't tell you they took their eggs and sperm. Betty and Barney didn't report that. They kept that a secret. They didn't really want to be exposed as the first abducted couple. Betty and Barney Hill, the abducted couple, first one recorded in modern times. They didn't want any publicity. She went to see a regressive hypnotist, by the way, because she had PTSD symptoms. She didn't know why. And it was then that they found out that she had been taken and he had been taken. And they had been worked on and they had sperm and eggs taken. But she never reported that. Not until like many years later when she admitted it. When they show up, we're going to have to reevaluate ourselves. We're going to have to take a serious look at what we've been buying as religion. We're going to have to take a serious look at reincarnation. Because at some point, that needs to be a revelation too. 3/4 of the world believe in it, but we don't. Why? Because there's no money in it. I mean, I don't know how else to explain it. You should never go to a human being and place your faith in that human being as a God, as an emissary of God, as God's right-hand man, as God's partner, as God's compadre. I really think people need to start thinking of them for themselves, start recognizing that most cultures believe in reincarnation, which means their ancestors are there somewhere They may even have been reincarnated in a child you don't even recognize at this point.
So when you see things like the North Korean dictatorship that believes they're direct descendants of a deity and that's all been a part of, do you think that that's the reality you're talking about being co-opted for ape power, or do you feel like that's a more significant indicator of that these people are that attached to that and it's carried on for however long?
They're using it.
Co-opted.
They're using it. They're using that fact that they need to believe in something. Like Dylan says, you got to serve somebody. It may be the devil or it may be the Lord, but you got to serve somebody. That gene is there. So rather than have a God, they make a man a God. And the man tells him he's God. And he tells him over and over and over and over again. It's just like in, what was that movie? Clockwork Orange. Tell somebody something enough, they will believe it. We saw that. We've seen that. It's been shown over and over again. People are malleable.
So do you think right now we're just at a point where we've for want of a better way of putting it, we've become malleable by the wrong hands?
Yeah. Anybody who wants power will use that malleability to their end. If they tell them, you're going to go to hell if you don't listen to me. If they tell them your kids won't be able to, your kid will go to school, boy, and come back as a girl.
Right.
You're using that. You're using that instinct that people have to believe in the wrong things at the wrong time. It didn't work. The whole thing, the God gene didn't work because you know what? The world wasn't a more peaceful place because of it.
No.
It was more violent, much more violent. People being burned at the stake, people being driven into synagogues and they light the place on fire.
I was going to say persecution just for belief only.
That happened in my father's hometown. And I was only 5 years away from that stuff. No. Evil, you got to oppose. It isn't enough to say, I don't do this, I don't. You have to oppose evil.
Right.
You have to stand up to evil.
Agreed.
Every damn time. And not worry about if you get killed. Because you know what? You have many lives ahead of you. Think of how that frees people up. Knowing they're going to come back, knowing they're going to see their loved ones again, knowing that this is not a final act, knowing that they're responsible for what they do, knowing that the devil's in the mirror and so is God, knowing that makes you a much better person.
So let's presume that ancient civilizations had a more clearer grasp on that. I feel like that was likely the case. At what point or why do you think it is that we get this, what becomes Christianity and this dogma supplanted on top of us now that we're debatably 2,000 years deep in and we're just moving further from what we used to know?
When I see the grip they have on people, it's frightening. And I can't think that it can exist without a genetic predisposition. The more I look at it, they seem like they cannot let go of that, what to them is a life preserver.
Yeah.
And they are in a sea, and they feel like if they let go of that life preserver, they're going to drown. And nobody wants to drown.
So you think it was just selling that premise that
They
started...
sold the greatest con ever made, greatest grift ever done. It's Christianity. Started with Paul's letters to the church. But you know who sold Christianity? Constantine. And his mother. What was her name? Helena. Constantine's mother. He sent her to the Holy Land to gather up relics, 300-year-old things that were supposedly belonged to Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
She found Jesus she arrives with a caravan, like gold and all these people, all these handlers, and she's looking to buy the original cross. And I got it. Somebody else was, no, I got it. No, I've got it. She gathered up every relic she could find. What is unknown to most people is that one of the relics that's in at least a half dozen different churches is Jesus' foreskin from his circumcision. And I'm not making this up. It's true. They have his foreskin in a little gold case in 6 different places. He must have been enormous. Anyhow, what was that? Yeah. So Christianity was a marketing. First of all, what I tell people to get them thinking is that Christianity was successful because they had bacon, and they didn't have circumcision, and those were the 2 things that made Christianity successful.
I guess those are powerful sales pitches
Are you
at that
kidding?
time.
Yeah, anything that doesn't taste better with bacon. I mean,
Yeah.
and circumcision.
Yeah.
Don't
Opt out.
even go there.
So they were ready to opt out of that one.
What are you laughing at? That was the marketing thing.
Right.
And not only that, but they didn't have all these laws. The Jews had 600? You know this. You should be.
Yeah. 100%.
He's educated.
Oh, 100%.
They had 600 commandments or something. I tried to read them one time. It was ridiculous. If they steal your horse, you can kill them. Weird shit. I mean, stuff you can't imagine. The Essenes, like I said, the Essenes were wonderful, wonderful people. You could come there as a guest. You wore a red band when you came as a guest, and they knew you were there, and you weren't one of them, but they were still nice to you. You were there to learn, and you wanted. And the Essenes gathered information from all over the civilized world. They gathered they had Buddhism, they had Hindu, they had Jainism, everything. And you know what always suffers? Libraries.
Yes.
What destroyed the Great Library of Alexandria? Who destroyed the Great Library of Alexandria? The newborn Christians destroyed that. They were really big on burning things. When they took over the Maya, they burned everything they could find. And the Aztecs and the Inca, all their art, all their stories, everything they could find. And when the Romans took Jerusalem, they burned it down to the ground, killed everybody. Some of them hid out in the Dead Sea caves. There was a terrible prejudice against the Essene and against Qumran. For years and years, they told us they're a bunch of monastic guys living by themselves in the caves. Not true. There were a complete civilization on those cliffs above. If you look at the picture of Qumran, you'll notice that above the caves, there's a plateau that was totally occupied by at least a couple hundred people. They had a library. They had rooms where they found at least 11 inkwells in this place. Inkwells. They were gathering knowledge. Of course the Romans had to destroy them.
Yeah, well, that was sort of their thing. That's kind of the Romans' MO in history.
You could have this contest. Who are the worst people in history?
They're up there.
Let's nominate the Spanish. Right? Let's nominate compared to the Spanish, the Nazis were but a blip on the radar.
Right.
As far as length of time.
I was going to say, this is a time thing.
What?
Yeah, this is a time thing. We look back on things with, like...
1,000 years. Think of 1,000 years you didn't advance. What could we have had by then? I think what they did, they were experimenting. They put the God gene in people, and they this thing about Jesus was sold to such an extent that it overshadowed everything for 1,000 years. And nobody, and I'm telling you, the only people who could read and write back then were the clergy and the Jews. The Jews are reading Hebrew. What's that going to do for? That's fascinating too. The only language that was brought back from the dead, Hebrew.
Yeah.
The language that died there. That's another thing. I often want to say to somebody Hispanic, don't you wish you could speak the language of your ancestors? Don't you wish you still had the beliefs
Right.
that were in your culture for hundreds, maybe thousands of years, and that were taken from you? And you're speaking Spanish because your language was lost.
And nobody... That's so far from the radar today.
Of course it is. The damage of supplanting a culture with an artificial belief. with a belief in something that was basically revision Judaism.
Well, and that's happened how many times?
Everybody steals from the Jews. Everybody. Jennifer asked me about the Bible. I said, well, most of it is the Old Testament. You have a small section. I mean, it's like this guy said this guy said that guy said that, all about the same person. And I had to explain to her those stories about Noah, those stories about David and Goliath, those stories, they belong to my people. We should have been paying royalties on that.
Yeah.
I'm serious.
Well, that's funny you should say that. And this is something that
Corporations.
I find curious when you talk about things like the flood and things that happen across multiple beliefs now.
What did happen, of course, meant multiple beliefs.
Right. Do you think that... I honestly don't know how to post this. Do you think that those are things that happened that the extraterrestrials or whatever it was aware of, and this was a matter of manipulation at that time, and we were just simple enough to have to stick these dogma stories to it, and that's why everybody has the same story with just a little bit variation?
There seemed to be a plan, like with Moses.
Crossing the sea. There seemed to be a plan, but in each case, the plan, if it were artfully done, worked with the natural means.
Right.
The parting of the sea by Cecil B. DeMille became the actual low tide in the Sea of Reeds, where the chariots would have gotten bogged down. So then you say, well, it's a matter of faith then, isn't it? Well, I think it was divine intervention of some kind. Now, if you say God works through mysterious means, you can say that force of good that wanted the Jews to survive so that they could somehow tell people, stop it. Stop using blood in your ceremonies. Stop killing things.
Right.
Even that went by the wayside. By the time that Jesus came around, they were offering animals for sacrifice. So the original didn't last very long. I'm sorry, what was your actual question?
No, I'm drifting with you.
I go wherever it goes.
Yeah. Well, I'm a little bit. I get perplexed about how we can have these commonalities, stories like the flood, stories, things like this,
right,
that would definitely suggest that we have a common history. We've got inherently a common future, but we get so segmented. We're so splintered off. Everybody's got to make their own version of what really happened instead of trying to find out what really happened.
It's a fundamental thing. One of the books I've read and I recommend to people is The Art of Loving by Erich Fromm. And it's a very, very fundamental thing. He talks about people of light and people of darkness. He just somehow manages to reduce it to that dichotomy.
Mm-hmm.
That there are people who want to spread light, they want to spread love, they want to spread understanding, they want people to be kind to each other, and there are people who don't. And my wife likes to say there's good people and bad people, and she's right about that.
Do you think that this is hangover from the ape genes, or this is just the reality of existence?
There's no doubt you could find alpha apes that are very violent and nasty, and you could also find alpha apes that are protective and kind.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I think there's no doubt that we are a naked ape. Okay? We act so much like apes, it's ridiculous.
Right.
If you watch, I saw one the other day, she hadn't seen her, she thought her child was dead. She said, I cried. An ape, a chimpanzee showing this love and affection. Oh my gosh, the ape was so human-like. Or are we so chimp-like? And does it really even matter?
Yeah, well, that's a very operative question there.
But if you think of it this way, if you were from another planet and you see this species that still knows how to have fun, oh my God, if your civilization lasted long enough, all the things we consider as pleasure would be gone.
Of course.
They wouldn't know how to have pleasure. And how would they find out how to have pleasure? they would gene splice from a species that is still primitive enough to enjoy a good steak or making love. I want what they're having. See, that's what this is. When they come down here, I think some of them come down here because they want to be more human, because they don't enjoy life. They see us having a great time and they think, oh my God, these people have, oh, look at that. They enjoy eating. We haven't enjoyed that in millennium. Just think of, oh, by the way, you know what the cattle mutilations, before I'm on that, the cattle mutilations?
Yeah.
The Greys don't have a digestive system. They can't enjoy a good meal. They absorb
nutrients through their fingertips. This is what it says in there. But I believe it's true, because all the cattle mutilations is not one drop of blood, and it's blood they drink. They're drinking the blood. They're using the blood. The blood is a nutrient. You can't make blood. Did you know that? You can't reproduce blood.
Yeah, exactly. That's why we have to have blood drives still.
Absolutely. But have you seen the cattle mutilations? Have you seen stories of them?
Yeah.
Not a drop of blood. They're there. They have surgical cuts that look like they're cut with laser, eyes completely, and not a drop of blood. Not a drop of blood on the ground. No animals will touch them. It's been going on for quite a long time, by the way.
Right. Yeah, I was going to say that's one of those things that there's very old anecdotal stories of that.
Well, they'll tell you now that it's the black helicopters doing it. They say the black helicopters are full of people who look ridiculously Chinese. What are they coming?
That's in here. That the black helicopters with no markings on them that you see after UFOs come through, they come down, they show up. He said that this guy came across one of them that had landed, and these guys come out, and they all looked Oriental, every one of them. And I think, well, all right, so what? And then I see it again. And then I read in here, in the Yellow Book, that the Chinese are cooperating with them. And I know we were cooperating with them, so why wouldn't they be cooperating with them? And they're going to give them something that'll throw us back to the Stone Age. And
well, it's funny you should say that because I've been, and you had mentioned this earlier, I've been really thinking a lot about AI lately and how it's getting into our lives, and I'm likening it a lot to how life transitioned when the internet became accessible to people.
Right.
And I had watched a video where the sentiment of the video was whoever basically controls AI will control the world going forward, and that China is very much trying to usurp us in AI, and even by their estimations, America is still right now got the most handle on AI, but that's what they're after, and they feel will supplant them as a world superpower that will be undeniable.
I heard they're even with us now, but they weren't 2 weeks ago, and that's a worrisome thing.
Right.
Think of it this way. What could the conquistadors have done if they didn't have armor, weapons, swords, which were game changers in their culture? This is much worse than that.
Oh, yeah.
Much worse.
Much bigger.
We don't even know what they could do. We don't know because we're not on that level. We don't know what a supercomputer is capable of because we can't think on that level, so we can't really imagine it.
Yeah, that's the thing. Quantum computing and things like that are going to think at a rate and a scale that we can't even comprehend.
Quantum mechanics tells us that all those people spending all those years in physics class were wasting their time.
Right.
That's kind of sad. So are they able to adjust? You got to be easily flexible when things are changing quickly. They're going to show themselves. They have been. And there's more than one group. There's a group. The Pleiades comes up all the time. The Pleiades is a small system of 7 stars. They call them the 7 sisters.
Right, yep.
Goes in a nautilus shape. A lot of stars within that system. You hear that. You hear Beta Reticuli. And other places as well. I mean, when we blew up the atom, but you know what we did? We blew up bombs in the atmosphere, sending pulses going out throughout the entire solar system. These pulses of telltale signs that we have an atomic bomb here.
And at one point, we were lighting off quite a few of them.
We were doing it constantly. It was on my birthday.
What was the name of that little chain of islands, the atolls? And they were just blowing them off there constantly.
There was another. You're talking about well, Bimini was one or two. But they destroyed that environment. They destroyed the coral reef. They destroyed everything, and they did it all. This is why I say men shouldn't be running the world. Women should be running the world.
Yeah, and that whole part of the earth is still impacted by that.
Chimps wage war. Chimps will organize a raiding party.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Isn't that amazing? The other day I saw some whales getting together trying to topple a sea lion off of a big sheet of ice. And they all came together, all four of them at one time, went under the ice, pushed it up and broke it free. And then they pushed a giant wave onto it, all together now. Like they sat together having poker and said, oh, this is what we're going to do, guys.
Yeah.
And we are so stupid.
You're talking about orcas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're brilliant. They are
yeah.
absolutely brilliant. I mean, considering they have no hands, seriously. I always had an argument with my friend who became a cardiothoracic surgeon. I said chimps were smarter than dolphins, and he said dolphins are smarter than chimps. I said, well, we decided you couldn't really judge because one didn't have hands. So it made it extremely hard to make a comparison.
Yeah, well, that's one of the things, too, kind of rewind a little bit. When you see sentience like that in other animals, it seems like as humans we get broke up into two camps. One camp that's like, this is just animal behavior. Of course, the mom cries for its baby when we take it away and whatever. Right. And then the other part that sees this as some type of sentience. Why do you think we are somewhat obsessed with trying to put ourselves above everything?
Hubris.
Yeah, what's with that? Why as humans do we do that?
Why do we always have hubris? When somebody gets a degree in a medical degree, gets hubris. Somebody else is a doctor, he thinks he's God. It is an unmistakable human tendency.
And it doesn't seem to serve us any purpose outside of our own skin.
Yeah, well, that's the problem. Too many of us think of our own skin. It's been a challenge for me, being raised had a very rough childhood. And I have had to say to myself, I cannot be responding to that my whole life. It's like that. You have to overcome where you started from. And it may be that hubris is something that must always be overcome. It never ends well.
No. And we can't seem to learn that one, though.
The original one was about Atlantis, wasn't it? The original hubris story was they thought that they were on the top of the world, the people of Atlantis, and then they wind up on the bottom of the ocean. So there's a lesson there somewhere.
Yeah.
As Dylan said, I've got nothing, Ma, to live up to.
Do you think that sentiment is the gift or the curse of this ride?
First, they need to know that they're not here to have a good time. They're here to overcome. I think that's the first mistake. That they have to do the best they can to overcome everything that is keeping them from being good people, giving people, loving people. That's really the challenge. And our world does not allow us to be anything but selfish. It values everything that's wrong. It keeps score with money. It keeps score. At no point do we ever say, what did we do to make this world better? Who have we helped? Who's better off because you're here? I learned very young. My mother was mentally ill, and my father was a victim of losing his father. That multiple wave of pain, that dysfunction that goes generation after generation. My father lost his father when he was 7. There were times when I wouldn't talk to my father. So much of this has to do with generation after generation not overcoming, not stepping up, not seeing that they're this body that they're in, that this is something to overcome, not to succumb to. Being related to apes is not easy. When I was younger, I had to make. I was trying to tell people the other day, you're going to turn people onto science, kids onto science. Don't do it when they're already in puberty. You haven't got a prayer.
Right.
All they can think about is sex, and they don't even seem to understand that. You got a 16-year-old kid, you're going to try to explain to him the actual birds and bees? No, it's not going to work. So one of the things that I'm going to be doing some kind of talk somewhere, it's going to be empowerment, and I'm going to tell them that you turn them on to science as fast as possible before they even go to school. You turn them on to the wonder of things growing. And I don't mean computer science.
That's a co-opted term too.
I mean nature. Get them to realize they are part of it. They're responsible for it. That's the tricky part. When they translated my people's Torah, they said, you are stewards of the earth. My people said you are stewards. It became translated into, you own it. It's yours. Take what you want. That whole philosophy, to me, reeks of Christianity. It's yours. Take what you want. You'll be forgiven. No matter what you do, you'll be forgiven. Well, how could you tell people that? No matter what you do, you're not responsible. The devil made you do it. How could you tell people that?
Well, what do you think would be, why do you think someone saw that as advantageous at one point enough to propagate that?
It's just marketing. That's all it is. They had the Jews in their rearview mirror the whole time. They wanted to surpass the Jews. The Jews had all these punishments for everything. They were ridiculous. They wouldn't allow women in their, in the same section of the synagogue. And I think they saw that as an opportunity. To me, it's nothing but marketing. If you think about the relic business during those centuries, how much money these churches made off of selling thorns from Jesus' crown of thorns. And you go in a church, it's in a glass case, gold all around it, and it's a thorn. And they believe a 300-year-old thorn survived. I met the man who examined the Shroud of Turin, Macron. He was an expert on microscopy, polarized microscopy expert. And he told me it was a ochre, it was dye. That God gene has messed us up. We really ought to be respecting our ancestors because they were real. And what if everybody did come back and they say, you know what, there's an in-between. I got to see everybody who died. That would take the lid right off it. The church would no longer have that power of saying to you, you're going into hell if you don't do what I tell you to do. That's a man telling you that. That's not a God.
But it seems like we're living in a world right now where everybody's kind of taking this selfish standpoint to that degree and saying, I think that's some of maybe I don't want to say the rise in secularism, but the fall in some of Christianity's numbers of people just want to turn themselves loose into, I decide what's hedonistic and what isn't. I go from here.
Okay, but they're looking at that as only two choices. Either they go for the dogma and swallow it hook, line, and sinker, or they become agnostic.
Right.
Or atheist.
Yeah.
They don't see the third choice.
Which is?
To do what the rest of the world's been doing for millennium. Recognizing that the people who came before you still love you, still care about you, and they still exist in some dimension. Respecting that would straighten your ass out. Because if you knew your mother, who didn't want you to drink, is watching you having a binge, or your father who didn't want you to gamble is watching you throw money away on a football game, that may be the only hope you have as a human being, is to realize that the people who came before you were real. They did not die. They transformed. They transgressed. They're still there. They could still input. They're whispering in your ear. I talk to people all the time who say, my father's with me. I can feel him. But if they go to church, the guy in the suit with the funny collar may say, no, that's Jesus talking to you. They felt their father. They sensed their father. What the hell is wrong with that? How is that in opposition to Christianity? Because it is. It is in direct opposition. Because you're saying that there is no heaven or hell. There is no split choice. Are you going to go, it's a selection process. You go over there, you go over there. Who does that selection? Oh, St. Michael. Oh, of course. Sure.
That makes
They
perfect
made
sense.
the woman who was collecting pieces of the cross and the thorns and of Constantine's mother. They made her a saint too. They throw those things out like so easily. You know, it's ridiculous.
But it's all just a matter of expediency, wouldn't you say?
The whole operation is expedient. It's not necessary. None of it's necessary. They need to realize that they had their original religion or belief. Let's not say religion. That whatever belief they might have had naturally, whatever belief they might have had by just rolling off the log and realizing the mom's gone, why do I still feel her presence? You don't want somebody telling you that's Jesus. Let it be mom. The hell with him. Let it be mom. They can't handle that. And when you watch these shows, they can't go more than 30 seconds without bringing up Jesus and the cross. They can't wear clothes without showing a crucifix. You can't go into a building without seeing it on the wall.
Right.
Why is it so necessary for them to constantly shove it down their throats if it's real?
Well, it wouldn't be.
If it was real, would you need to constantly remind yourself of it? And everybody else, did you need to shove your religion down people's throats?
Well, they don't put a sign by the pool that says the water's wet.
John the Baptist wasn't the scene, by the way. Those practices of bathing for ritual purposes, you know that was done long before John the Baptist.
Yeah.
Many cultures did that. You know,
Yeah.
it was logical. But the Jews said, the woman, you can't use the same bathwater as the woman used. I thought that was a little over the top. So the way I saw it, Judaism was failing. They saw a need to put an ambassador down here, and they sent a hybrid. And they set him up. They put the star up there, you know, and the three wise men might have been in Men in Black for all we know. We don't know. But they set it up. The guy really did exist, and he was a wonderful person. But he was a person. He may have had some funky genes, but he was still the person. And you know what they say? When I read the transgression of somebody who was living at the time, the only reason I believed it is because every single thing this lady said checked out, and some of it wasn't even known when this was written. Jesus had to disappear from the cave. He had to not be there, so that his body had been resurrected along with his soul
Right.
as a living entity, more or less. In the Dolores Cannon hypno-regress version of it, the Essene went into the cave where Jesus was, and they turned him into dust, his ashes. They made him into ashes, so that it appeared that he had left, and that his body had left the tomb, but it was just mixed in with the dirt on the ground. Now, that's pretty hard to believe. But that came from somebody who had already stated so many facts that were ridiculously true and that showed incredible knowledge of ancient history that they had no access to. When you see a 4-year-old, by the time they're 5, it disappears. A 4-year-old kid say he lived before, you're not my mommy, I didn't live here, I didn't eat that food, these are not my clothes. And the kid's 3.5, 4 years old. And by the time he's 5, he forgets it. When they see that over and over and over again, and it gets back to an earlier point, can you believe something that you don't believe? Can you see something you don't believe? Some people cannot see something they don't believe in. They literally cannot see it. And you see that in John Mack's book about abductions. I saw it myself. I was 14 years old. I saw a flying saucer. For real. It wasn't a blob of light. It wasn't an orb. It was a craft. It was hovering above the avenue. We had one area where all the business was in Philly. I might have told you this. It was just sitting there, right above it. You couldn't miss it. And my friend, who became the cardiothoracic surgeon, ran away. And years later, he wouldn't admit to me that he saw it. But I know he saw it. But I couldn't understand why he ran away. And I couldn't understand why he said he didn't see it. But then I read John Mackey's book about abductions, and some of them, in their present conscious state, they couldn't accept it. Only while under hypnosis could they accept it. I see this thing. There's a guy getting out of his car right in front of me. I grab a total friggin' stranger, and he didn't react to it. He didn't react to it. I couldn't understand. I didn't understand it. My friend couldn't react to it. He couldn't react to it. And then not until I read about other cases where people just cannot wrap their head around it.
And that happens in varying degrees in people's experience, their human experience. Yeah. Like if they witness something tragic or.
You know what it says in this book? Humans.
Can I call for a brief intermission?
Yeah.
I'm about to explode my bladder.
Okay. So you can sneak past.
I was going to try and hold it for the whole thing, but I was literally like.
What about Jennifer? She go to the bathroom?
Right here. I didn't
Yeah.
drink any water.
I drank too much.
Purposely did not.
It's a fascinating book.
Well, one of the things I wanted to talk to you about and ask you, I didn't really anticipate bringing up, but I recently I've been introduced to this gentleman. I think I'm going to meet him when I go up to Tennessee, and I think I'm going to be able to interview him at some point. But he was like a regular old Tennessee boy, right? And he had, when he was, I think he was in his early 20s. He didn't have a career. He didn't have a major education or anything like that. And he had a terrible accident, and he was unconscious. He fell off a cliff, and he was unconscious at the base of this cliff for days before anybody found him. And when they got him back, they, did whatever they needed to get him back up and running again. And as soon as he was able to communicate clearly and back somewhat on terra firma, he started espousing all of this in-depth knowledge about lasers. And he started to develop these lasers, so much so that he developed this company. Elon Musk uses these lasers for his guidance. And this person had dead zero knowledge of lasers. He was like let's just say for the sake of discussion, a tractor mechanic. He had no knowledge of lasers whatsoever.
Was there an event that led to this?
Yeah, he fell off this cliff.
That's it.
Yeah, and then here's the other part.
That's funny.
He can also draw all of these like hieroglyphics straight from memory perfectly that he had never seen in his life up to that
And
point.
they checked out. They were real.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yes. There's there's versions of them on walls and on
The question
stone
there,
tablets and things.
that has to do with the DNA. Is the DNA considerably more than we think it is? Is it a recording machine? Is it a recording machine from past lives? Is there some way that information could have been carried over from one life to another? Because that's the only way you can explain it.
Right.
So obviously, he had a connection to the past, but he had the motor skills.
Biggest downside to this space, I can't slip away in the middle of an interview.
No.
I had to walk right in front of all the cameras.
Hey, this is what I said. We pee a lot.
Yeah. We're the watery ones out here. So yeah, I mean, and that was one of those things that really struck me when I learned of this gentleman, and I'm very much looking forward to potentially meeting him and interviewing him, because I feel I've had points in my life where, not to be too much about me, but I've had some NDEs in my life, and I've had some things where I felt like afterwards I had that feeling like I had just read 10 books or something. Like I didn't come back and have knowledge of laser beams or come back and be able to draw hieroglyphics and things, but I do have a distinct experience feeling that I have other knowledge I can get. I just can't get it here.
You know what the Akashic record is?
I do.
That's the Akashic record that you're tapping into. That knowledge is there somewhere.
Yes.
And I believe it's if there were any physical location for that knowledge, if there was such a thing, being it was dimensional, in our dimension, it would be in the DNA. Because they keep finding, and also the fact that the brain, part of our brain is not even being used, but our brain is not going to store information from a past life unless there's some other method for it to get there.
Right.
A quantum entanglement is the only other way that you can explain it. There is no other way to explain it. Because somehow the DNA when Ray Moody was getting people to draw on people who died, relatives of theirs, the other side, I believe he was using their DNA in their mind to get there, to get to that place, which would mean that we have superpowers we're not aware of. And I believe that's true. And that when you deal with people who can meditate, who really know how to meditate, they are tapping into those powers. Many of them can conquer cold and hunger, and it's amazing how they can control their body.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've watched that. Actually, one of the, I don't know, but experiments or rituals they do is to go under this ledge that's all ice, and the water is rolling from the top over the ice onto them, and they just stand there completely unfazed.
They're the same people who, during the 60s, when they were protesting the Vietnam War, would light themselves on fire and
Yes.
not move. Not move. They have conquered that. They have taken themselves out of that place. They've allowed their mind to take them away from the pain. It's not that they're taking it and putting up with it. They're not even feeling it.
Exactly.
Somehow that's a superpower. Think about it. If you could remember every life you had, you'd have to remember every death too.
Never thought of it that way.
And there's good reason to believe that people like me were burned at the stake at some point. Maybe even people like you.
I was going to say, I actually had one time I went to see a medium, and it was a very interesting experience for me, but for her as well.
What did she tell you?
One of the things, and I don't know if I told you about this or not, but one of the things was as soon as I sat down, she just started blathering, like seemingly uncontrollably. And she did that for maybe 2 minutes, which felt like a long time. And she stopped herself and she was like, "I'm sorry, I don't normally do that, but you have a lot of people with you and they're all trying to talk to me at once."
That's your soul group.
And
That's your soul group.
you
You have a lot of help.
Yeah, she was very much making me aware of that.
Well, if you're aware of that, then life is easier, isn't it?
It has given me some peace, for sure.
The people that Ray Moody worked with and other people who have transgressed and remembered why they were afraid of flying or why this, and it came from a previous life. They didn't have an experience in that life. It was a past life.
Well, and that's why I bring this up,
And they're
because
always better off for it, always.
I had asked her, at one point she said to me, "Are you a man of faith?" And I said, "No, I've actually been baptized twice, but I have no religion, and I have a real aversion to it. And even as a child, it made me feel very strange, and I couldn't really identify those feelings as a kid." And she said, "Well, that's because you were a victim of extreme religious persecution in a former life, and that's why you can't be a part of it now."
They used to give people a choice sometimes. You can convert to Christianity and we'll just strangle you. But if you don't, we'll burn you. That was their choice. Methods of execution. They have no excuse for the murders that they have been committing all of these centuries. And on its face, it is evidence that what they believe in is not true. There is no Prince of Peace. We had no peace. I read one person say, "He saved our world." Where? Where is our world saved? Because I don't see it.
2,000 years down the road, a lot of people have the feeling right now we're going the opposite direction.
This guy's trying to tell me that Jesus saved the world, and I'm trying, where is it saved? I don't see any evidence of people being saved. I see evidence of hate, war, famine, a climate that's about to just kill us.
And incredible disparities in the human experience.
And in income, which is the human experience. Those who have too much, and those who haven't. When you have an army of people who don't have enough, you're going to have a problem sooner or later. I think that's also why the Jews are like the canaries in the mine. They always get picked on first, but they're never the last to get picked on. They're always the first. So you got to watch how they're treated. And it's been difficult for me because I didn't fit in with my own people, having been self-educated and not somebody who just has to have a degree. You know, and when I would tell people that I'm self-educated, they would say, you can always go back to school. And I would say, you're not getting the point, are you?
Apparently not. Not if that was the response.
The point. I read.
Yeah, I
You're
mean,
limited by your professors, by their experiences, by whatever they believe is true, what their dogma is, what their belief is. They're human. They're going to impart themselves on that lesson. Somehow they are coming through to you. Now, if they're good and they're righteous and they're good people, and you got Einstein as a teacher, or Erich Fromm, or some other wonderful person, that's great. But what if you have a Hitler, you know, Mussolini? I didn't find out Mussolini was a teacher when he was younger. I always thought he was Trump in a different life, but that's a whole other story.
well, we're gonna wrap it up on two things. One kind of easy, one maybe not so easy.
What is the meaning of life?
Yeah, right.
42.
I think we've touched on something a couple of times that's something that's close to my heart and was very much a backbone of my desire as a parent. And it was to teach my kids to be able to critically think. Don't let anyone lead you to believe. Don't take things at face value, even if it seems to make sense. Put it past your own QC first. What do you think we can do to help one another be able to have some faith to use our own QC again and start to critically think again? How can we help each other do that?
Maybe the whole structure of school is wrong. The whole structure of it. You know, they've often tried in the years past to have different kinds of schools, some where you didn't have to attend if you didn't want to, or some other nonsense.
Yeah, free-range chicken school.
Yeah, and they've never seemed to get anything right in the middle. It's always extreme. It's either too much or too little. When teachers ask me, and they have asked me, because I was basically a kid who learned in spite of school.
Same.
Well, you see, how do we reach these wonderful misfits that we have? And I speak to kids all the time and to teachers, and I said, these are marvelous misfits. Okay, normal people never change anything.
No, they don't.
And somebody once said the future belongs to the man who's not satisfied. Okay, and we can do better than this. We can do better than this, or to the woman who says we can do better than this. And that's another thing. We've got to take better care of the women. This is embarrassing. It's embarrassing. I'm ashamed to be a man most of the time.
Well, that was Kurt Cobain writing the lyrics, I swear I don't have a gun. We've had some people along the way that recognize that. And
what if we taught them the right things at the right time? What if the first thing they ever do is to plant a seed and watch it grow? They can use one of my microscopes to watch the little fine hairs come out of the roots, and how, my God, the leaf comes up and at first it's white. And within hours, it turns green. You could use your phone for a good purpose. Put on time lapse. Watch that. What do you think will happen if this happens, if that happens? The predictability of everything they teach is an insult. The lesson should not be totally predictable. It should allow for unpredictability. Okay? Well, look, we planted 10 seeds. Only 9 of them came up. That's where it begins. What happened to number 10? Now we're growing them. Oh, these 9 that we have left, 1 or 2 of them, their leaves are turning yellow. Are we going to just give up, let it die? Or are we going to try to find out why the leaves are turning yellow? There it is again.
so we just living in too much of a time where everything is so spoon-fed or such a foregone conclusion. We don't have the opportunity to practice thinking, so we just don't.
He talks about that. I think in parallel. He talks about that. We want everything wrapped up neat and tidy.
Yep.
That's not thinking. Well, we did shows.
That's not a real thing, debatably.
Well, when Jen and I would do shows, Our table looked like a mess. It had bugs, it had lumps of clay, it had fabric, it had flower parts, it had ferns, it had this, it had slides, it had water, it had stuff was happening.
Yeah.
And the science teachers would come up to us and say, I like that. Those other guys, everything's so neat and perfect, and they got suits on. I'm wearing like this, I'm dressed like this or something. Totally different approach
Yes, sir.
because it was logic. A real scientist is not neat. Real science is not predictable. You need to teach them real science, not that crap that passes for. And none of the teachers that you have teaching the science, maybe 10% of them are qualified to teach science. I have found, gym teachers teaching science.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, you think you guys are going to solve the problems in this world by having a gym teacher as your science teacher?
Oh, man.
Teach science early, teach agriculture. The first thing you should teach is agriculture.
Maybe we need to make a magnet out of that says you think you're going to solve the world's problems with gym teachers teaching science. That might be that's happening more than I think either one of us would like to imagine. All right, well,
I would read most of what I learned in elementary school. I was soaring in 6th grade. I was sinking in 7th. It was when I went to middle school, which was horror.
Yeah, it was a lot similar for me, too. One of the things I never really talk about, but I was expelled from high school in the first week of my junior year. I proceeded to homeschool myself my entire 4 years of high school, and then I graduated college with a 4.0 at the top of my class.
No wonder I like you.
So it just goes, it's one of those things that I only bring up
You're
when
self-educated.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's what makes us different.
And I try to bring that up to
That is
people,
critical thinking.
not to have anything to do with me, but to more illustrate the fact that you can color outside the lines and still get where you're going.
But what does it say when school is such a failure that the two of us had to get around it? We had to succeed in spite of it, not because of it. What does it say?
Well, I think they're barking up the wrong one-size-fits-all tree. I think it's fundamentally an ethos that isn't tenable.
Yes. They're looking to get a certain result with a certain curriculum, and then they're happy.
Exactly.
Well, because it doesn't take, they don't care. I always used to tell teachers that a good teacher is worth their weight in gold. They should pay good teachers twice as much, but they should also fire the other half.
Not make them gym teachers, not give them dual enrollment.
God. No tenure.
No tenure in anything. I'm with that.
I had the best teachers in elementary school. I did.
Yeah, I'm very grateful for the teachers that I had. I don't public school is a whole other talk we could have, but I'm very grateful for the mentors and teachers I had along the way.
Public and pubic are only one letter apart. But,
Yeah.
but I went through public school, and I hated it. But then I would have probably hated any school they put me in because it's regimented, and the really creative people can't handle that. That is an homogenizing device. School is a homogenizing device.
100%.
Let's turn all the globulars into the same size so they all fit together.
100%. Well, we could talk for a whole nother hour, but I want to wrap this one up on something where there's no
Go on, shoot.
right or wrong answer, as it were. If there's one piece of information you have that you accept as knowledge that's part of reality undeniably, that you feel like most people are walking around without, what is the one bit of operative knowledge you wish you could share if you only had one to share?
It's not over when we think it's over. And we have a responsibility to make the world a better place, even if it takes us several lifetimes. That's it.
That's powerful. Well, Dennis, I can't tell you how much I appreciate talking to you, man. I am so grateful that you're a part of my life and I can bounce these things off you and hear your side.
I hope we can keep doing this.
Yeah, for sure. No matter where I end up or what we're doing, we're going to have Dennis Brock part 4, and this one is going to be part 3, part 1 and 2. So we got a catalog on deck, my friend.
Well, people need to use that thing they got up here.
Yes.
They were given a gift, and this is not, we are here to learn, we are here to teach, we are here to make the world a better place.
Amen, brother. I'm with that 1,000%. Thank you so much, Dennis.
God bless you. Take care. Whatever
All
wherever
the
you
above.
want to go. I always say that, and I don't even know is that a person. Yahweh, may Yahweh smile upon you.